stars, it's your girl Kristyn, and we are back, you guys, with another Mentorship Mondays video. So for those of you who are not familiar with me, I am Kristynalexis. I have my project management certification, and I also have my MBA that I got from Michigan State University. I've talked a lot on my channel about having my MBA as well as my project management certification. A lot of you guys went along with me for the ride to get my certification too. That was a journey in itself. But today I want to talk about the pros, the cons, the benefits of going one track versus the other. So I hope you guys are looking forward to this. I do have to admit I have a cheat sheet here that I'm going to rely on a little bit for this video. Also, if you have any questions, you guys, comment below in the comment section. Let me know what you're thinking. Let me know what you want to know, and we can chat about it down there. So with that, you guys, let me drink this tea and let's get into it, okay? Okay, so I think before we even start, it's really important to understand what is an MBA and what is a PMP certification. So first, an MBA is a Master's of Business Administration. You can get an MBA in multiple different concentrations, sub-concentrations. You can go to a different tier of schools. So you can go to schools like Harvard or Michigan State like I went to, and then they even have online schools or schools like DeVry, which we've probably seen on TV and stuff like that. So there's a lot of different levels to your MBA. There's a lot of different things you can get an MBA in. And again, it's considered to be like secondary education. And some people get their MBA directly after getting their bachelor's, and other people wait like I did, and they go a couple years later and they get their MBA after they get a little bit of experience in the field. So that's an MBA. A project management certification is basically as it sounds. You are essentially becoming certified in project management. So you're learning how to do project management. Now, to become certified as a project manager, you do have to have some prerequisites already met. And with an MBA, you also have to have some prerequisites met as well. But for the certification, you have to have so many hours of project management experience. You have to also have so many hours of the schooling to be able to qualify to take the test. And essentially, it is basically just an exam that you take and you pass. And once you take the exam, you do continued education where you can either read books or listen to podcasts or attend classes, and you continue the education of becoming a project manager, and you maintain your certification that way. So that is the difference between the two. Hopefully I finessed that well enough for you guys, but if there's anyone who is also familiar, feel free to comment below and just add anything that you feel like would be helpful. But in essence, that's the difference between those two tracks. Now, you can also go to get your MBA and become certified as a project manager. That's what I did, and there are definitely benefits to doing that. However, I do think there's some distinct differences between why you would go one route versus the other. And this is something that I think is important because, like I said, I've gotten a lot of questions from people asking me, should I get a project management certification or an MBA? And looking at it as like one or the other. And I think that this conversation can kind of help you put some color to which route you would want to go, or if you want to decide to do both. Okay, so now that we've talked about the differences between the two and what the definitions of them are, let's first talk about the MBA, okay? So when you get your MBA, in my opinion, the MBA can open a lot of different doors. Because you get your MBA, you can become certified in one particular route or one function. And when I say function, I'm talking marketing, finance, supply chain, human resources. Those are functions that you see in a corporation that you can go the pathway of your MBA. Some schools do a general MBA where you don't specialize in a specific function, but where your MBA is more general in nature. The thing about the MBA, and this is one distinction that I think is important, is that the MBA can actually be like a universal key that opens up multiple doors for you. And what I mean by that is, just because you get your MBA in one function does not mean that every company is going to make you stay in that function, is going to make you stay in that particular niche. You know, you can branch out and do other things. So if you're like me, I actually came into my organization with a marketing MBA, and I have worked in a variety of functions. I've worked in supply chain, quality, marketing, finance, regulatory, logistics. So I've had a chance to touch a lot of different places in the organization, and I wasn't limited to just marketing because I had a marketing MBA. So in my opinion, the MBA can be like a universal key that opens a variety of doors for you and basically is like getting you into a certain level in corporate America, but you can pivot and do other things in addition to project management with that MBA. Now, the project management certification is going to be more niche down, where you are getting that certification because you want to be able to do project management like work. Now, it doesn't mean you have to go to be a project manager, but it means that you want to understand how project management works. You want to prove that you are an expert in that particular area and you know what's necessary to run and manage projects. Now, you may end up getting your certification because you are in a leadership role and you have projects underneath you and you want to make sure that those projects are ran and facilitated in the correct way. That can benefit you as well. But in my opinion, you can go further with the MBA because it opens multiple doors, is like that universal key, as opposed to the PMP that is going to have you be more niche down as a project management type role. Doesn't mean you have to be a project manager, but if you only have the project management certification and you're in corporate, you may not be as easily able to take on some of the roles that an MBA can get you. A lot of jobs in corporate America have the requirement of an MBA to be able to level up. So that's just, in my opinion, the difference. You get one key that's a little more niche down, and the MBA can potentially be a universal key to open up a variety of doors for you. I know I've talked about before that MBAs can be looked at differently at different companies, and there are levels to the MBA. So certain MBAs can take you further than other MBAs. I definitely think that not all MBAs are looked at equally, are created equally, and get the same amount of weight in corporate America. So that is important. You always want to do your research, but I do think that the right MBA can take you a little bit further in corporate than a project management certification. So for example, if you wanted to be a CEO at a Fortune 500 and you were like, I'm going for CEO, it's going to be easier for you to get a really good MBA and to go after that job than it would be if you only had a project management certification. Now, I'm not trying to dog the project management certification at all because it is an amazing thing to have, but I think when you're comparing the two, there are just some slight nuances, and this is one of them, that the MBA can for sure take you a little bit further than the PMP can take you by itself. Now let's talk about the project management certification for a little bit because there's some pros with this thing as well. So if you have your project management certification and you work for an organization that does not have project management down, you are going to be looked at as a rock star because you understand the fundamentals, you understand how to approach a project and how to really get things done and get them done efficiently, effectively, bring people together to get projects done. And it just really, really sets you apart when you have that certification and you understand how to approach projects, because approaching projects can be a very complex thing. It can be super intimidating. It can just give people like analysis paralysis when you just don't know how to just dumb it down, simplify it down so that you can take on that project, as well as ensure you don't go over budget, you don't go over timeline and things of that nature. So the PMP can be so value add, especially in organizations who don't understand project management, who don't have that skill set down, who oftentimes will recruit, companies or consulting firms to come in and do that type of project work. You really set yourself apart when you have that certification and when you really, really make a point to understand how it works, to execute to the way that the book tells you how to do the work. Like, you're gonna look like a rock star. You're gonna be more confident around getting that work done. Like, it makes a huge difference. And I will say, I had been working on projects for a really long time. We had a pretty good process as to how to run and facilitate projects, which we had been doing for years. But getting the project management certification just turned on a light for me that helped me understand how to really implement the little things that made my projects more effective, efficient, cost-effective, all of those good things. So I definitely think it just sets you apart. The other thing is, when you're looking at organizations that understand project management that have project managers. And if you want to go into a role like this, typically you can tell those companies, like right off the bat, companies like Dell, where they have project managers throughout the whole organization, and it's just something they know how to do. They do it right. So when you think about going into and leveraging your certification, there's a lot of opportunity that comes with it. And it's one of these things where, like, when you go to B school, you learn things that are applicable to every day in corporate America. But there's still kind of this sense of like theory, very high level. Companies kind of do things the way they do it. Whereas with a project management certification, it's even closer to you learn in this book, you go to work and you do exactly what you learned. Whereas the MBA, again, there's a little bit of grace in terms of like the theory and what's actually applicable in corporate. Undergrad is even further away from the MBA, in my opinion. Like, I feel like when you go to undergrad and you learn these things, you're just kind of learning like what is advertising, what is marketing. Whereas when you get the MBA, you're a little closer, and then certifications get you even closer. And I will say, when I got my project management certification, I really felt like it added so much value to my everyday job and my everyday life and my career. So there is that to take into account. Like, I feel like you get it, you take it, and you're able to like really apply it right away. And it just adds so much value and so much confidence to your career. Here come my dogs. Oh my goodness, they're so loud. Okay, so one thing I think I kind of mentioned, but I want to make sure I spike out, is when you get your PMP, you do have a requirement for hours that you have to work in project management, and you have a requirement for how many hours of training or schooling you have to have. Whereas the MBA route, typically there is a preference, but not necessarily a requirement at most schools for how much experience they would like you to have. But if you have other things on your resume that are, you know, set you apart, you may not have to have that years of experience, whereas the PMP, it's a requirement. So I think that's important to spike out, because I did go to school with people at our MBA program who had no experience. They literally went undergrad, MBA, and then graduated. And some schools won't accept you for your MBA like that, but they typically don't make it where it's a forced requirement if you have a really strong resume. Maybe you did internships, maybe you were like 4.0, Dean's List, you know what I mean? Like, there's things that you can do where they're gonna consider your application and they may let you in. Whereas the PMP is like, you gotta check these boxes, you have to certify that you're telling the truth, and then they'll let you take the test to get the certification. So I think that was important to like spike out, because it's just a slight little nuance difference between the two. But I think that both of these routes, both of these pathways are so value add and have added so much value to my career and to my life. Like, I can't even begin to tell you guys. It's amazing. So there's a couple other things I do want to spike out. Like, I don't want this video to be too long, but there's some things like I wrote down here that I definitely think are important to mention. So I have here that an MBA exposes you to many functions and specialties that you'll interact with in corporate. And that is very true. So when you go to get your MBA, you're going to take coursework in finance and marketing and supply chain, because they want you to understand the variety of functions in corporate America and what it means to be in those functions and work with those functions. Whereas a project management certification, again, it's niched down, it's specific to project management, and you're going to be narrow focused on how to do that type of coursework. So that's the slight difference. The cool thing about the MBA too is it's fun, it makes you think. You have like real cases that you work on where it gives you these examples of things that happened in corporate or have happened, and you basically just apply everything you know and you talk through those cases and figure out what the best scenario, the best solution for that particular problem is. And I love that kind of work. It was so much fun. But the PMP was different. But the MBA, when it comes to that, was really, really, really fun. One thing that I honestly kind of liked about the MBA is that when you get your MBA, you are done. That's it. You don't have to continue your education. You don't have to take additional classes to keep it. Whereas the PMP, that is one thing that, I'm not gonna lie, I think it's helpful because it helps keep you fresh when it comes to being a project manager. But at the same time, there are times where I just feel like I'm going through the motion and I'm checking the boxes because there's so many hours you have to do to continue your education. And it's a lot. Like, I'm not gonna lie, that piece of it, like, you always are moving forward, and I get it. I understand why they do not want you to become, you know, not sharp in the field, in the specialty. But at the same time, there is that. Like, you definitely have to continue your coursework. You have to continue doing what you gotta do to stay fresh. Whereas the MBA, when you're done and you get that piece of paper, that's it. Okay, so let's talk about money, okay? So when you first come out of an MBA program, and I'll just talk about the program that I went to, so Michigan State. When I came out of Michigan State, you would see people coming out with incomes anywhere from $85,000. There maybe would be like a straggler below that, but then you could see people all the way up to 100,000, which I think was kind of maybe like the average. And then you may see people all the way up to $150,000 a year. And there's that range there. But the cool thing about the MBA is it opens the doors like I told you about before. So you have the ability to continue your career, to promote up from manager to director to vice president to president. And you could be making millions. I mean, the potential is endless. Whereas in a project management certification, you could promote up into a very high level project management type role, but typically there's gonna come a point in your career where you're going to need to get the MBA. So it's almost like there's a level where you just can't really go any further, or we could even call it a glass ceiling, where you can get so far, but if you wanna keep going in corporate, most likely you're gonna need to get your MBA. So those are just, I think, the slight nuances between the two when it comes to the amount of money you can make and how far you can go. Now for me, I have to admit, I'm not as familiar with entry-level project management salaries, but I could imagine it's probably anywhere from like $50,000 if you're starting at the one, I think that it's called the CAPM, if I'm not mistaken. But there's basically the certification you can get if you don't have experience, and you get that one, and then as you gain experience, you can get your project management certification. So with the PMP, I definitely could see incomes being all the way up to 100,000, probably even a little bit more than that. But I think there's definitely going to be a glass ceiling where you'll have to make the decision as to if you're going to get your MBA or not. Okay, one thing I think is kind of interesting, when you get your MBA, you'll see some people will put the credentials of MBA at the end of their name, but in industry it's actually not a common practice, whereas with the PMP it is more common for people to actually put the PMP credentialing at the end of their name. So I think that, I don't know if anyone really cares about that. I personally don't put either one at the end of my name, but it's something that people do typically do, and you know, depending on the company you work for, you may see it. But when I see people put MBA at the end of their name, I always kind of like, I notice it, but it's just not something that's like common practice across the industry as a whole. I did want to spike that out though, because I pay attention to it, I see it, and I always find it to be kind of interesting. But at the same time, you know, it's not like, if you're doing it just to get the letters, like, it's not really that big of a flex. I think the last thing I want to mention when it comes to the project management certification is some companies value a project management certification and some companies do not. So you will see that there will be places where they don't have an income structure or a promotion structure mapped out for people who have project management, you know, pathways. You will see some companies where they just don't really understand it or have a value for it, or when times get tough and they have to decide who are they going to get rid of as to who do they have to run the business, you may see roles like project managers get displaced, whereas other core functions like finance are more secure because you need finance to run the company. So I think that that's something to also mention. Like I did also say earlier, there are some companies though that they believe wholeheartedly in project management. It is a major part of the company, and you will see that. And that is something that is absolutely amazing, but I think it is important to just spike out that some companies value it and some companies, they don't. So that concludes the list of items that I had to share with you around the differences between a project management certification and an MBA. I hope that this was kind of helpful. I feel like I just dumped a lot on you guys, and sometimes I try not to be so like talk at you in these videos, but I wanted this to be a dialogue that you could kind of walk away with some different pearls. Now, don't take everything I said as like Bible, because again, it's going to vary across the industry. Some places may value things that other companies don't, and vice versa. So, you know, it's one of those things where take it with a grain of salt. Definitely take this into consideration. And if you are someone where you want to get both, do it, because you just are going to open so many doors. And again, it's almost like that analogy I used earlier with like the universal key. The more feathers you put in your hat, it's like you just get access to more things in your career. So I really hope you guys enjoyed this video and got something out of it. If you have any content topics or ideas for continuing this series on, definitely let me know in the comment section. But I really appreciate you guys for watching this video all the way to the end and for giving it a chance. And if you have any additional ideas, comments, thoughts, whatever, please put them below in the comment section. And with that, you guys, I'm about to get up out of here. So thanks again for watching this video. I love y'all. I appreciate you. Hit the thumbs up button. Subscribe if you want some more of this. And I will see you guys in my next upload. Bye-bye.